Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Holy Humanist. Sorry that the timing of this stream was kind of all over the place. I have back-to-back streams today, so our guest, well, not a guest anymore, he's become quite the regular on this channel, is so flexible and nice with how much I annoy him and say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can we change it last minute?" And then the reason I'm an extra bit late is because of Dale's joke in the chat. I read it to Prince backstage and we were cracking up, and I was like, I can't just go on laughing. Anyways, welcome everybody. John Stopman, Kiko, Dale, obviously, Kin, Sweeney, everyone that's here, thank you so much. So without further ado, I'm gonna get Prince Tyler on once again. Hi, Prince, how you doing?
I am fantastic as always. It's always an honor to come to your channel. And so for those who want to check out my channel, it is Tyler Preston 20. You can find it on YouTube. I also have a TikTok account. I also have Facebook and Twitter. And I talk about everything on my channel. And so I talk about religion, theology, movies, anything you could think of. I just talk about it on my channel. So please check out my channel to see more of that fun stuff.
Yeah, look at this. Atheist reads the Bible, Noah's Ark, which is very which is very pertinent to our discussion today. But yes, please go ahead and subscribe to Prince's channel if you haven't already. And also if you're on TikTok, right? Because Prince, do you want to talk about your TikTok a little bit?
Yeah, on TikTok, I just respond to, apologists or do comparative mythology videos. And so my TikTok right now has over 900 subscribers over the course of 3 months. And so I guess many people want to see like comparative mythology or critique about religion. And maybe you should probably start a TikTok too someday.
Oh, I've heard it's savage out there. I'm okay with YouTube. It is savage. But no, kudos to anybody who's doing that work on TikTok, because I've seen the amount of hate that people do get. So even doing something as informative, Prince, and basic as what you're doing, like just making comparisons based on things you've read, people will come at you if it goes against, the standard narrative. But yeah, so Prince, can you tell us a little bit about what you have in store for us today?
So let's go to the presentation first. So what I have in store for today is a comparison of the various kinds of flood myths that might have inspired the Quran. And so throughout the course of the presentation, I'm hoping to, show maybe not just Muslims, but also non-Muslims what can possibly inspire the story within the Quran and the Bible. Because the thing about Abrahamic religions is that they're brother and sister religion. And so if the brother has one story, then the sister also has the same sort of story. And I'm hoping to kill two birds with one stone with this presentation once we begin starting to talk about it.
Okay, amazing, fantastic. As soon as Prince told me this idea, I was like, hell's yes, we have to talk about this. And then obviously the amount of books that Prince has, I'm guessing we're all going to be educated here on, just any of the basic conclusions that we jump to about where we thought these flood myths originated and who stole from who. But basically what we're trying to do is go through just the general tapestry of history and see that what I ended up with in terms of being a Muslim following the Quran, and what Prince ended up with, where all of those come from, especially as Prince was saying, it's so intertwined in terms of the trade routes and the way knowledge was being passed down, and how a lot of it was focused on the oratory retelling of stories. So I think we're going to see all of that and where it kind of links together in the tapestry of history. So yeah, Prince, what would you like me to start with? Because the floor is yours. I love
Let's
that.
start.
By the way, I'm going to flood Nuria's channel with information. That's a great pun.
Let's start with the PowerPoint first.
Okie dokes.
Yeah, so like with the bad Jesus image, where I highlight Jesus Christ with the middle finger, this is my image of the Prophet Muhammad directly from Charlie Hebdo. Now, there are many reasons why I specifically chose this image for this presentation. The first reason, and I think it's something that many people, I guess you can say, on the left, I'm not going to say everybody, but some people, they have no problem criticizing like Jesus Christ or any other religious figure, but when it comes down to the idea of Muhammad, they tend to shy away of that. And I think it's very hypocritical for people to not make fun of Muhammad the same way that they make fun of Jesus. And hopefully, by having this presentation with the image of Muhammad, that of course I continue the path for everybody else to follow after me. Also, I want to say that this is also in dedication to the people at Charlie Hebdo because they died from a shooting. And I remember it was in France because they drew images like this, and people were gunned down because of that. And more recently in France, there was like a teacher who was basically also, I believe, attacked and killed for showing this image in his classroom for free speech. And I think it's really important and to also say that free speech applies to anybody. It does not matter if of course it's like, for Christianity, for Islam, if there's ideas that, are out there in the public, that it's important to actually criticize the ideas that the religion or faith has. And so we need to be very consistent. If it's okay to make fun of Jesus, it's okay to make fun of Muhammad. So without further hesitation, let's start with the presentation. All right, so the core belief of Islam. So basically, when it comes down to many Muslims, according to the data that was done by the Pew Research Center, that traditionally Muslims adhere to several articles of faith. Among the most widely known are that there is only one God, that God sent numerous messengers, with Muhammad being his final prophet, that God revealed holy scriptures, including the Quran, that God's angels exist. Even if people cannot see them, there will be a day of judgment when God determined whether individuals are going to go to heaven or hell, and God's will and knowledge are absolute, meaning that people are subject to fate or predetermination. So basically, it seems as though that based upon this data, that there's like a lot of countries that think that, of course, the Quran is like God's word. There's, of course, Nigeria with 90%. There's, of course, Cameroon is like a 93%. There's Kenya like 76%. And so most African countries see like the Quran as the holy word for God. Now we go to the next slide. It said that basically, as previously noted, a belief in one God and the Prophet Muhammad is nearly universal among Muslims in most countries surveyed. Although the survey asked only respondents in sub-Saharan Africa whether they considered the Quran to be the word of God, the founding in that region indicate a broad access. Across most of the African nations surveyed, more than 9 in 10 Muslims say that the Quran is the word of God, and a solid majority say that it should be taken literally, word by word. And I have a question for you quickly. Like, when you were Muslim, Naria, like, did they actually thought that Noah's Ark was literal?
Yeah, for a little bit. When I was really young, yes, because I'm sure the same way they do it for the Bible, they have like stories for children out of the Quran, and it was basically Noah's Ark story, and it was all about like just it was God's way, like only God could make something like that happen, and that was God's way of doing it. So yeah, I did buy into it for a bit. I'm extremely embarrassed to say.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
as
for the
soon as you
case,
hit
like
high
for the
school,
yeah,
yeah.
for the case of the faith that I grew up in, which is Catholicism, they did not see the story as literal, but there are some parts of Protestant Christianity that take it literally. And so normally the people that take it literally are young earth creationists. And I'm going to go into the details about, I guess, the data about young earth creationists in America. So let's get right at it. Now, according to the Gallup poll that was done in July 26, 2019, that basically 40% of US adults ascribe to a strictly creationist view of human origins, believing that God created them in their present form within the past 10,000 years. However, more Americans continue to think that humans evolve over millions of years, either with God's guidance, which is 33%, or increasingly without God's involvement at all, which is 22%. So, yeah, a large portion of the population, 40%, think that this is actually literal. Not a
Gee.
private moment.
Oh my gosh. And they're
Okay.
adults. These are adults, Tyler.
Yes. The latest finding from a June 3rd to 16 Gallup poll have not changed significantly since the last reading in 2017. However, the 22% of Americans today who do not believe in God had any role in human evolution marks a record high dating back to 1982. This figure has changed more than any other two over the years and coincides with the increasing number of Americans saying that they have no religious affiliation. As many as 47% and as few as 38% of Americans have a creationist view of human origins throughout Gallup's 37-year trend. Likewise, between 31% and 40% of American adults have attributed human development to a combination of evolution and divine intervention over the same period.
Can't get rid of the divine bit, like either with God's guidance or divine intervention. Just let that bit go.
Yeah. Okay, so here's some sort of background history about this. So, this right here is a map of ancient Mesopotamia, and the flood stories that we know today, from Noah's Ark and Atrahasis and these other kind of stories, basically have its origin directly from ancient Mesopotamia. So, according to the scientific data that we do know, that based upon the current day information, that a local flood can be traced back from 2900 BCE in ancient Mesopotamia, that there are many layers exposed in rocks near the southern eastern Mesopotamia that are likely flood deposits, and such flood debris came about from the Euphrates River near the ancient Sumerian city of Sunupek. And so there's actually, of course, data based upon scientists' information that it actually shows that there was actually a local flood. And for more information, I would also encourage people to go to the article that's done by the NCSC, the National Center for Science Education. And the article is actually called, Yes, Noah's Ark Floods May Have Happened, but Not the Whole Entire Earth. So let's switch to the video, because I want to show you guys the video real fast. So this is actually the Noah's Ark theme park that we have in the state of Kentucky. So
What?
yes.
Reds, how do you find this stuff? Oh my word. I found that like there's this like ship or like some kind of imprint of a ship that they found, and I think it was in Egypt or somewhere, and they took a picture near that saying, "We found the original Noah's Ark." But what is this?
All right, let's see the video. It's like only like a minute long, so a minute of this nonsense.
Prince,
Yeah, I
wow.
think you got the idea. So basically, the theme park was founded by a person named Ken Ham. And
Uh-huh.
Ken Ham is actually a young Earth creationist. He thinks
Hmm.
that the Earth is 6,000 years old. He thinks that everything in the book of Genesis is a literal account of history. He also thinks that humans and dinosaurs walked the Earth together. By the way, I'm not joking.
Wow. No, I don't think you are. I know there are people like this, but so he funded this all by himself as well?
I believe it was actually funded by tax dollars in Kentucky. There's like
Oh,
another yes, I want to share like another screen for you for like the news about the Noah's Ark thing.
yeah,
Another
sure.
like right there. So basically, like the Kentucky Noah's Ark sues insurance companies over damage caused by the heavy rains.
This has got to be a joke. Somebody's trolling really hard, right?
Oh, all right. We
Oh my
continue with
God.
the article. So, in Williamsburg, Kentucky, in the Bible, the ark survived an epic flood. Yet the owners of Kentucky's Noah's Ark attraction are demanding their insurance company bail them over heavy rains caused nearly $1 million in property damage. The ark encounter says in a federal lawsuit that rains in 2017 and 2018 caused a landslide and its access road. The lawsuit said that the road has been rebuilt, the ark was not damaged. The 100 and let's say the 510-foot long wooden ark has been a popular northern Kentucky attraction since 2016. Answer in Genesis, the company that operates at Arks Encounter, also operates the Creation Museum in Petersburg, which opens its
Yes,
door in
we do.
27.
Of
Yeah.
course. Oh my God. Tamas made a really good point, Prince. Blame the rainmaker. Just sort your problems out. Also, I really hope all of those animals were represented there. It seemed like just a handful of them. You know, it's not really living up to even the full nature of the story. The only thing I wanted to do was see that VR bit. Imagine they've probably like played out the whole simulation, right? That's what the kids. Oh wow. Anyway, do you want the presentation again?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So the main sources for tonight is the Babylonian Ark tablet that can be traced back to 2000 BCE. There's also the Epic of Atrahasis, which can be traced back to 1650 to 1650 BCE. There's also the Epic of Gilgamesh that can be traced back to 2100 to 1200 BCE. The Book of Genesis, which can be traced back to 1440 to 1400 BCE. The Library of Apollodorus, the Greek mythology, can be traced back to the second century AD, and finally the Quran. So let's start with the ladies first with the text. Not yet, but really close. Okay, so discovering the Babylonian Ark tablet. The Babylonian Ark tablet is the oldest version of the flood story to date. It can be traced back from 2000 BCE before the Otto horror story and Gilgamesh tale. It has 60 lines in total.
Wow.
So the tablet was recently discovered by Evan Finkel. He works at the British Museum as a deputy of the Mesopotamian clay tablet. In 1985, an ordinary looking tablet was brought to him at the museum. It gives details about the flood not seen in the Old Testament and other accounts. And of course, he made a book about it, and it was published in January 30th, 2019, about the whole entire discovery that he made about this new discovery that he had. So you can start.
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to go ahead and read this?
Sure, you can start reading it, and I'll do the other one. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is the Babylonian Ark tablet text, and it reads, wall, read wall, Atrahasis, pay heed to my advice, that you may live forever. Destroy your house, build a boat, spurn property, and save life. Draw out the boat that you will make, oh my days, on a circular plan. Let her length and breadth be equal. Let her floor area be one field. Let her sides be one nindan high. Your canoe ropes and aslu ropes, rushes. Let someone else twist the fronds and palm fiber for you. It will surely consume 14,430 sutu. I set in place 30 ribs, which were one parsiktu vessel thick, 10 nindan long. I set up 3,600 stanchions within her, which were half a parsiktu vessel thick, half a nindan high. I constructed her cabins above below. I apportioned one finger of bitumen for her outsides. I apportioned one finger of bitumen for her interior. I had already poured out one finger of bitumen onto her cabins. I caused the kilns to be loaded with 28,800 sutu of kupru bitumen, and I poured 3,600 sutu of iti bitumen within. The bitumen did not come to the surface, lit up to me, so I added 5 fingers of lard. I ordered the kilns to be loaded in equal measure. I applied the outside kupru bitumen from kilns. Out of the 120 gur measures which the workmen had put to one side, I lay myself down of rejoicing. My kith and kin went into the boat. joyful of my in-laws and the porter with and they ate and drank their fill. As for me, there was no word in my heart, and my heart, of my lips, I slept with difficulty. I went up on the roof and prayed to the moon god Sin, my lord, let my heartbreak be extinguished. Do you not disappear?
Yeah, the main reason why it has like the periods is because like they cannot decipher what exactly does the text say, so that's why it has the periods. Yeah.
Wow. Sin from his throne swore as to annihilation and desolation on the darkened day to come. But the wild animals from the steppe, two by two the boat did they enter. I had 5 of beer. They were transporting 11 or 12, 3 measures of sick bum, 1/3 measure of fodder, and cordinu plant. I ordered several times a 1 finger layer of lard for the girmadu roller out of the 30 gur which the workman had put to one side, when I shall have gone into the boat, cork the frame of her door.
Okay. All right, and this is my turn to read then. So the Epic of Atrahasis can be dated back from 1650 BCE. It was written out of order and contains 3 tablets. Of course, tablet 3 contains the flood story, and its fragments were first assembled and translated by George Smith in 1872. So, without further hesitation, here we go. When the gods were men, they did not force labor, they bore drudgery. Great indeed was the drudgery of the gods. The forced labor was heavy, the misery too much. The 7 great Anunna gods were burdering. The Iki gods know with forced labors. Some of these foreign words, I kind of feel strange saying them. I'm probably mispronouncing them myself. So
But Prince, it's so cool because we're saying words from like such a long time ago, like their measurements, their units, their gods, and yeah, it just feels weird. Even like I felt like that was a tongue twister when I was reading this too. I don't know what was that. But yeah, this is mad interesting. Go ahead. Sorry.
okay. The gods were digging water courses, canals they opened the life of the land. The Iki gods were digging water courses, canals they opened the life of the land. The Iki gods during the Tigris River and the Euphrates thereafter, springs they opened from the depths, wells they establish. They counted years of drudgery and 40 years too much, forced labors they brought night and day. They were complaining, denouncing, muttering down the dish. Let's face up to our foreman, the perfect. He must take off our heavy blooded monarchs. Ele, counselor of the gods, the warrior, come, let us remove him from his dwelling. Ely, counselor of the gods, the warrior, come, let us remove him from his dwelling. Now then, call for battle. Battle, let us join warfare. The gods heard his words. They set fire to their tools. They put out fire to their spaces and flames to their work baskets. It was night. Halfway through the watch, the house was surrounded, but the gods did not know. It was night. Halfway through the watch, Iker was surrounded, but Ali did not know. Oh man. New school opened its gates, took his weapons and went, and the assembly of all the gods, he now stood up about the command. Anu, your father, your counselor, the warrior, and Lee, your perfect Anu to Ta. Oh my god, Anu Ta? Yeah. I'm pushing up the words right now. You're perfect, Anuta, and Yoongi has sent me to say, who is the investigator of this battle? Who is the investigator of these hostilities? Who declared wars? The battle have run up to the gates of Enlu, and he transcribes the command of Enli. Everyone of us has declared war. We have said, like us, the excavation, exclusive degree has killed us. Our forced labor was heavy, the misery too much. Now every one of us gods has resolved with a reckoning. If Eli, I made it ready to speak and said to the gods, his brothers, what did we lay to their charge? Their forced labor was heavy, the misery too much. Every day the outcry was loud. We could hear the clamor. Let her create then a human, a man, let him bear the yoke, let him bear the yoke, let the man assemble of the gods, but let leave the midwife is present. So basically what's happening right here is that of course the gods had like a lot of work to do, and so they had to build like humans directly from clay so that the gods would not work as much. That's what's happening right here. Let the midwife create a human being. Let the man assemble the degree of the god. They summon and ask the goddess and the midwife of the gods why mommy, mommy. Oh.
You were doing so well to that point, Prince. Oh gosh.
Will you be the birth goddess, the creaturess of mankind? You know, that's a really interesting name, like mommy, huh? So, create a human being that he bears a yoke, let him bear the yoke, the task of Eli. Let man assimilate the degree of the god. Natsu made ready to speak and said to the great gods, it is not for me to do it. And said to the great gods, it is not for me to do it. The task is Enki's. That is, he cleanses all, let us prevent the clay so that I can do the making. Enki made it ready to speak and said to the great gods, on the first, seventh, and 15th days of the month, let me establish a purification of bath. Let one god be slaughtered. Let the gods be cleansed by immersion. Let Nintu mix clay with his flesh and blood. Let the same God and man be sorely mixed in the clay. Let us hear the drum for the rest of our time. From the flesh of the God let a spirit remain. Let it make the living know its sigh. Least he be announced to be forgotten. Let the spirit remain. The great Anu Nagas, who administrator destinies, answer yes in the assembly.
Wow, some deep stuff happening there, Prince, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Let's see, on the first, seventh, and 15th days of the month, he established a purification of bath. Nintu mixed clay with his flesh and blood. The same God and man were thoroughly mixed with the clay. For the rest of the time, they could hear the drum. For the flesh of the God, the spirit remain. It would make the living know his sight. Least be announced to be forgotten, the spirit remain. After she mixed clay, she summoned the Anuna, the great gods. The Ajiji, the great god, spat on the clay. Least be announced to be forgotten, the spirit remain. After she mixed the clay, she summoned the Ananu, the great gods. The Agigi, the great god, spat on the clay. Mommy, mommy made ready to speak and said to the great gods, you ordered me to take the task and I completed it. You slaughtered the god along with his aspiration. You I have drawn away with your heavy forced labor. I impose your degree on men. You has Bertal's clamor among mankind. You released the yoke. I made the restoration. Eleli committed an evil deed against the people. Atrahasis, see that word right here, Atrahasis, made ready to speak and said to his lord, make me know the meaning of the dream. Let me know that I may look out for its consequence. Enki made ready to speak and said to his servant, may you say, am I looking out while you're in the bathroom? Do you pay attention to a message that I speak for your well, listen to me. Read wall, pay attention to my words, flee the house, build a boat, forsake possession, and save life. So we're going to the flood part. So basically what's happening is that of course that the gods made, of course, humans from mud and clay. And of
Mhm.
course they make a lot of noise right now. And so because they make like a lot of noise, that of course it's starting to have the flood right now.
Yeah. And Prince, they were like making humans out of clay and also like kind of like giving a soul, putting the soul of God into them, right? Like a part of themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Because basically, it's also interesting because this sort of idea that humans come directly from clay is in other mythology too. You can see
Mhm.
it in the Quran. You can see it like, not necessarily clay, but mud, like in the Bible too. You can also see it within Greek mythology because I believe it was also Prometheus that also made humans directly from mud or clay. So that's like a lot of mythology that also have the same sort of idea. I
That
think it was
theme,
also, sorry.
that theme of humans being made of clay runs through them all. Yeah, for sure.
I think it was also for the Egyptian mythology too, if I'm not mistaken. So it's all like almost all of them have like I guess you can say clay.
Yeah,
Uh,
interesting.
So the boat you build be equal, roof her over like the dove, so that the sun should not see inside her. Let her be roof over foe, and the gear should not be very strong. The pin should be firm, and so that the boat will give him strength. I will slower down you later, shower down you later, a windfall of birds, a speck of fishes. He opened the water clock and filled it. He told it of the coming of the 7 day flood. 7 days. GG.
Damn! Cha-ching!
Atrahasis received the command. He assembled the elders at his gate. Atrahasis made ready to speak and said to the elders, "My God does not agree with your God." Enki and Eli were constantly angry with each other. They had expelled me from the land. Since I always refer Enki, he told me this: I cannot live in, nor can I set my feet on the earth of Eli. I will dwell with my God in the depths. The elders, the carpenter, carry his axe, the reedworker carry his stone, the rich man carried the pinch, and the poor man brought the materials needed. So it's like a very different because in the Noah's Ark story, they brought about like animals, but this one is like, material right here.
Mhm. Yeah,
Where's
that's very interesting.
Let's see. Bring whatever he had. Pure animals he slaughtered, cattle, fat animals he killed, sheep he chose and brought on board. So he brought aboard, like, dead animals.
Yeah, 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 and it's not like saving, animals as well. It's actually he slaughtered some as well and then chose which ones to bring on.
Yeah. The birds flying in the heavens, the cattle and of the cattle god, the creatures of the shippy, he brought on board. He invited his people to a fest. His family was brought on board. While one was eating, another was also drinking. The outlook of the weather changed. Adanote began to war in the clouds. The god, they heard his clamor. He brought Pinch to sell his door. By the time he bought his door, Idea was roaring in the clouds. The winds were furious as he set forth. He cut the mooring rope and released the boat.
Here we go.
Let's see. The storm were yoked. Anzi rent the sky with talons. He the land, and he broke its clamor like a pot. The flood came forth. Its power came upon the people like a battle. One person did not see another. They could not recognize each other in the catastrophe. The flood bellowed like a bull. The wind resounded like a screaming eagle. The darkness was dense. The sun was gone like flies. Anku made ready to speak and said to Nitu, the birth goddess, "You, birth goddess, creaturess of destinies, established death for all people. Now then, there be a third woman among the people. Among the people are the women who have borne and the women who have not borne. Let there be also among the people the she demon. Let her snatch the baby from the lap and bore it. Establish the high priestesses and high priestesses, and let there be taboo so it can be cut down, childbirth." So there you go. That was like the story for Atrahasis. What do you think?
That's, I mean, there was so many, like, similarities already, but going obviously, like, both ways, right? Like, from what we see, coming up with the Bible and the Quran, but also harking back to, there was certain thing about the creatures of the steppe that had come up twice, exactly like the same, description of who they are deciding to add the ship itself. But yeah, this one is wild because these gods are like really beefing with each other in the process, right? And then you've got obviously those recurring themes of the humans being made out of clay and kind of being a mixture of this divinity and like humans as well. And then all of these concepts of like forced labor, the gods being angry, and needing to wipe out all peoples for that certain point in time. But yeah, I just think it's really really interesting because I think Sammy makes a good point here as well. Like obviously Mesopotamia was um, some people say it's the birthplace of civilization as we know it, right? But it was a cultural hub at that time. So I think it makes total sense that we're going to see such recurring themes, but them to be like starkly from all the way their roots back to these stories right here. And
All
Prince,
right.
very, very good reading. Your mommy and all that.
Yeah, yours was very small in comparison to what I had to do. But don't worry, Gilgamesh is
You
just
get
as
brownie
long, just
points.
as long. All right, so the Epic of Gilgamesh can be dated back from 2100 to 1200 BCE, and it contains like 12 stone tablets, and it's said to be one of the oldest epic poems to date. So, prior to the discovery of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Book of Genesis was considered to be the oldest existing literature to date. But after its discovery, the British Museum hired George Smith to study the tablets and initially translate the story between 1875 and 1876. And that's
Oh,
right here. It's like a picture of like George Smith right here. Yeah. So, according to the accounts of his co-workers in the reading room on the day of discovery, was like, of course, like Smith realized what he was beginning to read, and he started to remove articles of his clothing and began running around the room and shouting delights.
oh my god, he was so chuffed. He's like so oh my gosh, if we could be a fly on the wall for that moment. Well, no, because he's undressing, but
Yeah, like, I can only imagine, like, if I was living in a time period where the oldest books to exist prior to the discovery of Gilgamesh was actually like, the book of Genesis, like you would also be like, very excited. I guess nowadays, like it's not much, but back then it was actually a humongous big deal to see this.
yeah, because you're turning literal what you think is history on its head, and it brings into question everything, right? Everything the Bible, like, because if you considered the Bible historical fact, this changes absolutely everything. You've got to question the entire chain of events in the Bible.
All right, your turn to read the text.
Okay, so this is the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it reads Shurippak, a city which thou knowest, and which on Euphrates' banks is set. That city as were the gods within it. Ooh. When their heart led the great gods to produce the flood, man of Shuruppak said, tear down this house, build a ship, give up possessions, seek thou life, despise property, and keep the soul alive. Aboard the ship, take thou the seed of all living things, the ship that thou shalt build. Her dimensions shall be to measure, equal shall be her width and length. That's literally verbatim again. Prince. Oh my days. I understood, and I said to Ea, my lord, behold, Lord, what thou hast thus ordered, I shall be honored to carry out. But what shall I answer the city, the people, and the elders? Ea opened his mouth to speak. Oh, God has a mouth, saying to me, his servant, thou shalt then thus speak unto them. I have learned that Enlil is hostile to me, so that I cannot reside in your city, nor set my foot in Enlil's territory. To the deep I will therefore go down to swell with my lord Ea. But upon you he will shower down abundance, the choicest birds, the rarest fishes. The land shall have its fill of harvest riches. Ooh,
Yeah,
it rhymes.
basically the theme of animals is reoccurring in this too.
100%. And the same beef between the gods. You
Mhm.
know, that he can't reside in the same city as Enlil. He who at dusk orders the husk greens will shower down upon you a rain of wheat to deceive the residents of Shurupak, real intent rain. With the first glow of dawn, the land was gathered about me. The little ones carried bitumen, while the
Bitumen,
grown ones,
like in the first ever slide, remember?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did not forget that word. That and the big bum thing or whatever. John knows. He laughed with in the chat. But yeah, while the grown ones bought all else that was needful, on the fifth day I laid her framework. 1 whole acre was her floor space, 10 dozen cubits the height of each of her walls, the dozen cubits each edge of the square deck. I laid out the shape of her sides and joined her together. I provided her with 6 decks, dividing her into 7 parts. Her floor plan I divided into 9 parts. I hammered water plugs into her. I saw to the punting poles and laid in supplies. 6 sar measures about 8 gallons of bitumen I poured into the furnace. 3 sar of the basket bearers transferred, aside from the 1 sar of oil which the coal king consumed, and the 2 sar of oil which the boatman stored away. bullocks. I slaughtered sheep. Oh gosh. You know what? One day people are going to read the way that we write and crack up. Hundreds and hundreds of years from now. Actually taking the mic. And I killed sheep every day, mussed red wine, oil, and white wine. I gave the workmen to drink as though water. Oh my gosh, that they might feast as on New Year's Day. On the seventh day, the ship was completed. The
Seven there again,
launching,
like 7 again, it's like again with the 7.
100%. It's right there. The launching was very difficult, so that they had to shift the floor planks above and below until two-thirds of the structure had gone into the water. Whenever I had laid it upon her, whatever I had of silver, I laid it upon her. Whatever I had of gold, I laid it upon her. Whatever I had of all the living being, I laid it upon her. All my family and kin I made go aboard the ship. The beasts of the field, the wild creatures of the field, here come the animals. All the creatures I made go aboard, here they are, from penguins to Siberian tiger. Shamash had set for me a stated time. Oh, all the craftsmen go aboard as well. Okay. And then, yeah. When he who orders unease at night will shower down a rain of blight, board thou the ship and battle up the gate. The stated time had arrived. He who orders unease at night showers down a rain of blight. I watched the appearance of the weather. The weather was awesome of behold. I boarded the ship and battened up the gate. To batten up the whole ship to the boatman, I handed over the structure together with its contents. With the first glow of dawn, a black cloud rose up from the horizon. Inside it, Adad, god of storm and rain, thunders. Nergal, the god of the netherworld, tears out the dam. The Anunnaki lift up the torches, setting the land ablaze with their glare, turning to blackness all that had been light. Wide landed like a pot. For one day the south storm blew, gathering speed as it blew, submerging the mountains, overtaking the people like a battle. No one can see his fellow. Oh, again, the theme of not being able to see anyone. No one can see, nor can the people be recognized from heaven. The gods were frightened by the flood, and shrinking back, they ascended to the heaven of Anu. The gods cowered like dogs, crouched. Wow, what are these weak gods? The gods cowered like dogs. That's such a funny line because there's gods and dogs, like um crouched against the outer wall. Ishtar is there as well. Ishtar cried out like a woman in travail. The sweet voiced mistress of the gods moans aloud. The olden days are alas turned to clay. It's all over. Because I bespoke evil in the assembly of the gods. How could I bespoke evil in the assembly of the gods, ordering battle for the destruction of my people, when it is I myself who give birth to my people? Like the spawn of the fishes, they fill the sea. The Anunnaki gods weep with her, their lips drawn tight, one and all. 6 days and 6 nights. Blows the flood winds as the south storm sweeps the land. When the 7th prince day arrived, the flood carrying south storm subsided in the battle, which it had fought like an army.
Yeah, when it comes down to this theme about the 7 days, I would say that the origins of that comes directly from, I guess, ancient culture, because for some reason they thought that 7's like a day of resting. And you can see this theme all the time in the Bible too, because in the 7th day when the God of the Bible rests, that's of course the day when he took off, right? And so, like, after 7 days, of course, Jesus rise from the dead. That's like another thing that's happening in the New Testament too. And so this occurring theme about 7 days is recurring these sort of stories.
Yep, 100% similar in the Quran as well. The sea grew quiet, the tempest was still, the flood ceased. I looked at the weather, stillness had set in, and all of mankind had returned to clay. The landscape was as level as a flat roof. I opened a hatch, and light fell on my face. Bowing low, I sat and wept, tears running down my face. I looked about the coastlines in the expanse of the sea, in each of 14 regions. there emerged a region mountain. On Mount Nisir, the ship came to a halt. Mount Nisir held the ship fast, allowing no motion. For 6 days the ship was held fast by Mount Nisir. When the seventh day arrived, I sent forth and set free a dove. The
Wait,
dove,
let's stop
yeah,
right there. Like,
yeah,
basically, the dove is also a Noah's Ark. That's like one pack. Okay, let's go.
yeah.
Let's continue on.
The dove went forth but came back. There was no resting place for it, and she turned round. Then I set forth and set swallow. The swallow went forth but came back. There was no resting place for it, and she turned around. I sent forth and set free a raven. The raven, yeah. Do you want to comment, Prince?
Yeah, about the raven, like, that was also in Noah's Ark because first he sent a dove and then a raven before he came out the ark. So that's like I wanted to say.
Yeah. The raven went forth, and seeing that the waters had diminished, he eats, circles, claws, and turns not around. Then I let out all to the four winds and offered a sacrifice. I poured out a libation on the top of the mountain. 7 and 7 cult vessels I set up. Upon their plate stands I heaped cane, and myrtle. The gods smelled the savor, the gods smelled the sweet savor. The gods crowded like flies about the sacrificer. As soon as the great goddess arrived, she lifted up the great jewels which Anu had fashioned to her liking. Ye gods here, as surely as this lapis upon my neck, I shall not forget. I shall be mindful of these days, forgetting them never. Let the gods come and to the offering, but let not Enlil come to the offering. For he, unreasoning, brought on the deluge, and my people consigned to destruction. As soon as Enlil arrived and saw the ship, Enlil was wroth. He was filled with wrath against the Igigigi gods, heavenly gods. Oh, I love that word. Igigigi is my new favorite gods. Has some living soul escaped? No man was to survive the destruction. Ninurta opened his mouth to speak, saying to Enlil, who other than Ea can devise plans? It is Ea alone who knows every matter. Ea opened his mouth to speak, saying to valiant Enlil, thou wisest of the gods, thou hero, how couldst thou unreasoning bring on the flood? On the sinner impose his sin, on the transgressor impose his transgression. Yet be lenient, lest he be cut off. Be patient, lest he be dislodged. Instead of thy bringing on the deluge, would that a lion had risen up to diminish mankind? Instead of thy bringing on the deluge, would that a wolf had risen up to diminish mankind? Instead of thy bringing up the deluge, would that pestilence had risen up to smite down mankind? It was not I who disclosed the secret of the great gods. I let
But a
Atrahasis.
Horus. Alright.
Damn! Direct naming. See a dream, and he perceived the secret of the gods.
Yeah, so basically it all comes back to Atrahasis.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now then, take counsel in regard to him. Thereupon Enlil went aboard the ship. Holding me by the hand, he took me aboard. He took my wife aboard and made her kneel by my side.
All right, so we're getting to Greek mythology. And we're
Eh,
gonna
eh.
go to the Library of Apollodorus. So when it comes down to the ideas of Greek mythology and Greek religion, they didn't have a Bible back then, because basically everything that was said about the myths and legends that we have right now came from mouth to mouth to mouth. And so it was actually, it wasn't until people like Homer started to write it down that we have recorded records about exactly the adventures of the gods and what people attributed to the gods. And the oldest collection of mythology of the gods is actually the Library of Apollodorus. To my knowledge, it's been said that Apollodorus did not actually write the Library of Apollodorus, but somebody else. But because he was highly respected, that's why they attributed it to Apollodorus. And to date, it's like the oldest collection of Greek mythology. And so, if anybody want to, see mythology directly from the Greek and not from a third-person source, I would recommend the Library of Apollodorus. I would also recommend the book that's called Metamorphosis. That's also a good collection of Greek and Roman mythology too. So let's start with the story. Prometheus had a son. Let's see, had a son, and when Zeus was destroyed the man of the Bronze Age. Oh my god, I forgot the pronunciation for that.
I saw you gloss over that. You just glossed over his name. Let's say Deucalion?
Yeah,
Deuc
Deucalion. Yeah,
Yeah.
Deucalion. Oh my god. It's like I know the name, but I forgot the name at the second. It's like
I love how you tried to
Deucalion,
skip over
Deucalion,
it and
yeah,
then it came up again.
yeah. The Deucalion, by the advice of Prometheus, constructed a chest and having stored with it provision he embarked in it. Oh my god. Like sometimes, like it's kind of really hard to think about these names. Oh my god. But Zeus was pouring heavy rain from heaven, flooded to the greater part of Greece, so that all men were destroyed, except a few who fell into the high mountains in the neighborhood, and that all the world inside of Ishmish and Peloponnesus was overwhelmed. All these foreign names, man. I'm gonna have one hell of a time tonight. But the Kellyon floating in the chest over the sea for 9 days and as many nights, and there when the rain ceased, he landed and sacrificed to Zeus, the god of escape. And Zeus sent Hermes to him and allowed him to choose what he would and choose to get men. And at the bidding of Zeus, he took up stones and strewed them over his head, to which the stones that Kellyon threw became man, and the stone became woman. So it's really short in comparison to the other stories.
Yeah, for real. Very short, but yeah, no. That was very yeah, that was I've been taken on such a journey with the others, and then like that was like, okay, we're done here now. But theirs ended with man and woman being created by the thrones being the stones being thrown, right? At the
Yeah.
very end. Yeah, okay.
All right, your turn to read the book of Genesis.
The book of Genesis, chapters 6 to 8. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, two, the sons of God, saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then, when the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with the humans forever, for they are mortal, their days will be 120 years." The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown.
So, for those who have no idea about the Nephilim, so according to the book of Enoch, is basically, of course, what happened was that, of course, there were like, angels having sex with like, the women on earth. And so they gave birth to these big ass giants. Yeah, that's what the Nephilim are. Basically, a hybrid of humans and angels.
But or even I know Prince, it sounds so whack, but like because especially this is in Genesis, but even with like the Anunnaki and stuff, right? They were like a hybrid of some of them of like these mixture between gods and humans, and like they were all manifested in different ways. But this is crazy. I wish we could get to a Nephilim anyway. But this is direct, so this is God actually coming together with human beings. So it's almost like that concept of the fusion between a mortal being and a godlike entity coming together, right? And merging into one,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
maybe a lot later down the line, like we'll see in the Quran, is what they probably consider like God blows his soul into you at a certain number of days of the child being conceived. But yes, anyway, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Jeez. The Lord regretted that he had human beings on earth. The Lord regretted it. How he's so not omnipotent and omniscient. Why would you regret something that you would know about? Anyway, the Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. Oh, poor God. So the Lord said, "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them." But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord.
Yeah, getting back to the context about what's happening right here. So, getting back to the book of Enoch, basically the excuse I would say that I guess some people would say, well, because the Nephilim were like, doing these awful things, that's why the flood is justified. But I would say it's not necessarily justified Because, like, if he already knew this sort of stuff could happen, then he could have the power to prevent it.
100%. It takes away from the claims of God being all knowing and all powerful, like straight out of the water. It blows that out of the water, pun intended.
Yeah.
um, Okay, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, maybe. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. Oh, can you see, Prince, as we go, like the options of how to build the ship kind of really remain intact, like the material used, the length and the breadth, like the measurements, it's very specific. This is how you are to, oh, here we go. Here come the instructions from God. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under every creature that has the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish, said the most loving God. Yes.
Yeah, the thing about this whole entire story is that apologists will go out their way to say, well, you see, God is actually, justified in flooding everybody that's living. And of course, when the flood happened, it would apply that, of course, everybody, including children, and I guess you can say pregnant women, also died as the result of flood. And the excuse that they will say, well, it's because sin is there. And because everybody was sinful, that's why it's justified. But when I have these type of conversations, I feel as though that they're trying to justify this sort of sense of the scale of genocide that's been actually going on in the story.
100%. And To Be Love has a good point, Prince. Forgot about the underwater creatures. Oh, okay. So God continues saying, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, and your sons and your wife and your sons. Why? Oh, and your son and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark two of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. All right. Two of every kind of bird, two of every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. The Lord then said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have ever made.
Yeah, keep in mind, everybody, that 40% of Americans think this is a literal story. Oh.
That is so true. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. 600. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds and of all creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. And after the 7 days, the floodwaters came on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. For 40 days, the flood kept coming on the earth, and as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose greatly the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Every living thing that moved on land perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind.
By the way, guys, there is no such scientific evidence of a flood that can cover up mountaintops. I'm gonna tell you guys just right now. Zero.
Yeah. Everything on dry land that has the breath of life in its nostrils died. Jeez, this is like genocide if I ever knew it, man, of multi-species genocide. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left and those within him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Now the spring deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed, and the rain had stopped from falling from the sky. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the water had gone down, and on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible.
Do you notice how the days keep changing?
Yep.
It's like, one half is like, a different day in comparison to the next paragraph because basically they have different sources for the exact same story. The documentary hypothesis go into great detail about it, but basically the editors back then they decided to slice together different sources from different authors of the exact same story. So little details like the days are the main reason why they tend to contradict right now.
Okay, gotcha. That's that they would even allow for those contradictions to be there, like almost side by side. But also, Prince, I'm noticing that theme of obviously the boat coming to resting place on a mountain. Just the name of the mountain has been changed, obviously, to fit the more geocentric area of what the story that we're looking at. But yeah, it's always a mountain. Um, by the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering of the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground." Why does he always speak like that? So annoying. "So they could multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it." Be fruitful and multiply, oh you humans and animals.
By
Um,
the way, this is like a recent translation by the NIV, not the King James version. So I wanted to make sure it was actually easy for us to read, not like, D and Del and these other kind of words. Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate that. It was already hard enough with those ancient texts. Um, oh, Prince, here's your turn.
All right. Quran chapter 71 or the Surah 71. Surely we sent Noah to his people, saying, "Warn your people before they come upon a painful chastisement." He said, "O my people, surely I plan warner to you, that you shall serve God and be careful of your duty to him and obey me. He will forgive you some of your faults and grant you a delay to an appointed term. Surely the term of Allah, when it comes to it not being postponed, but did you know?" He said, "Oh my God, surely I have called my people by night and by day, but my call was only made them flee the more. And whatever I called them, that thou mayest gave them." Oh my God, I picked like a King James Quran. Oh, that
It's not
thou may givest
oh, me.
them.
Yeah.
That thou mayest given them. They put their fingers in their ears, cover themselves with their garments, and persist in their puff up with pride. Then surely I called them out loud. Then surely I spoke to them in public and spoke to them in secret. Then I said, "Ask forgiveness of your Lord. Surely he is the most forgiving. He will send down to you the cloud, pouring down an abundance of rain. It will help you with the wealth and sons, make you for your gardens, and make you rivers. What is the matter with you that you fear not the greatness of Allah?"
Straight up, what's the matter with you?
Yeah. And indeed, he created you through various grades. Do you not see how Allah has created the seven heavens one above another, and made the moon within a light, and made a sun a lamp? What? A lamp?
Yeah. Oh god. And the moon
Oh,
there, the light, they say that means like reflected light. The Quran knew that the moon was so funny. Prince, what you can do with that bit.
yeah. And Allah has made you grown out the earth as a grown. He then returns to you to it. Then it will bring you forth and bring you forth. And Allah has made you the earth a wide expansion, that you may go along therein in wide paths. Noah said, "My Lord, surely they disobey me and follow him, whose wealth and children has added him nothing but loss." And they plan a very great plan. And they say, "By no means leave your gods." And indeed, they have strayed many away, and did not increase the unjust and anguish, but error. Because the wrong were drowned, then they were made into fire, so that they did not find any helpers besides Allah. So basically, when they were flooding, they were sent to hellfire. Wow.
Yeah, they were like they got fast entry, fast track to hell because they weren't even that aren't they going to be brought up on the day of resurrection?
Mm.
I mean, on the day of judgment. Sorry, they are supposed to be judged else, but they seem to have been fast tracked. What a terrible, terrible death for these people.
Yeah, not even like, when they were drowning, like when the God of the Bible was like drowning everybody, he did not send them to hell because the idea of hell did not exist back then. And so when they died, they kind of, died a peaceful death and this, died, but they died like a really horrible death and then get burned after that. That's crazy.
Yeah, these guys are still burning as we speak. Apparently, like this is still going on. But yeah, that's very interesting. Here, the concept is fully cemented of the hellfire now. Yeah.
And Noah said, "My Lord, leave not upon the land any dweller from among the unbelievers. For surely if thou leave them, that they led astray thy servants, and will not beget any immoral and graceful children. My Lord, forgive me and my parents and him who enters my house believing, and the believing man and the believing woman, and do not increase the unjust and anguish, but destruction." And that's the end of the presentation.
That was incredible, Prince. That was a real, real journey. And like, I don't know, as you were researching this obviously as well, like it must have struck out to you, right? That this is okay, because something I do want to talk about is when you say like yes there's evidence for localized floods and things like that, that's what I have seen in my kind of reading, trying to understand why there was so much importance given to these stories. And a lot of the times, stories don't just come out of anywhere. There is some level of reality to it, or humans are basing it off of something they may very well have experienced. So there's quite a lot of different theories as well. There's some theories about a really kind of not a global flood, but a flood of a grand scale that happens that happened towards some of the Greek islands. And then you have the exactly what you showed, localized flooding in Mesopotamia. But for them at that time, it could have almost felt like a big portion of the world was experiencing this flooding as well. So we have to admit that there is not a large proportion of evidence that says there was a global flood in the way that's depicted in the Bible, in the way that we understand Noah's Ark to be, because that says a lot of things. Like if you look at Noah's Ark and you do believe that everything else was wiped off the face of the earth and it was family that essentially repopulated the earth, then you would believe that we all come from Noah's lineage, essentially, right? So there are all
Exactly.
of these things. Yeah. Go ahead, Prince.
Yeah, the thing about it, like, I can only speak from the Catholic experience because I cannot talk about the other denominations, but at least for the Catholic experience, that they did not teach us in a literal form, because they taught me when I was in Sunday school that is actually in reference of a local flood. And so
Mm.
when I was actually doing research for this presentation, it seemed to confirm exactly what I learned during Sunday school lessons. And so they would teach it as like a local flood that happened that was done by God. But even in the case it was like a local flood, that's still like a really bad thing. It doesn't seem
Yeah.
to justify, like, any of the stuff that I guess you can say happened.
And I mean, still, like, what you even if there was a natural disaster and you're attributing that to God, the reasons that this is happening, like when we see them talk about pride and being like, not righteous or having beef with the gods, if we go back to the Mesopotamian ones, it's all the need to have this mass extinction, or the need to kind of safeguard a certain few select people, it's there's no good moral compass to come out of this. I mean, they try and sell it. Even as a kid, I was saying, they tried to sell this story like, oh, it's the same thing in the Bible. They believe the same thing. This must have happened. And you see, like, God wanted to, like, just get rid of sin and start all over again. And you kind of think that, like, in a weird way, you're siding with God. You're like, yeah, there must have been so much sin. He was sick of his. But it makes no sense if you critically think about it a bit more. Obviously he knew. Because I would also go back to things like, I mean, growing up, like having Western education, you do know that like dinosaurs existed. You don't really think it's all make believe. So I would always push that on the Islamic narrative and say, well, if God did that with Noah's Ark, why did he also have to wipe out the dinosaurs? Like, how many times is he going to keep testing creation? I thought that was the answer I would get, that he's testing creation. And then I was like, why would he make dinosaurs if like it's like my Quran teacher and stuff would tell me that he made dinosaurs, but then they weren't able to worship him in the same way that humans can, and like he can't test them the way that he can test humans, so he got rid of them. And I was like, that just sounds ridiculous. Like, why this monster?
Well, that's the first time I heard about that.
Really? Oh my god, Islamic like answers are hilarious, Prince. This is the kind of stuff I was told and had to like ponder on, and information I had to sit with.
Oh my god. Like, I'm so fortunate that when I was growing up, we never took the story literally. I would say that my first time I heard about the idea of people taking it literally was when I saw videos on YouTube about, I guess, Bill Nye the Science Guy and versus like Ken Ham. And he was actually debating, like, based upon the science, that there is no evidence of the worldwide flood. And like Ken Ham literally said, well, you see, because Book of Genesis is true. That's why, of course, the worldwide flood actually happened. And it's actually opened my eyes to the idea that there are some Christian sects within Protestant denominations that do think that it was actually a literal story. And I'm actually surprised and shocked that there's like more than 40% of people in my country that think that is real, and that there's a whole entire theme park based upon this story is mind blowing.
It is absolutely wild. But Prince, what did you think of it then? As you just thought it was like this like what, just like more of a moral that we just need to extract from this, and but it's definitely rooted in like just a fairy? You never ever thought that God would have actually, did you think he was scaring you? He was like giving you an example of what would have happened, or if you
Yeah,
what were
it's
you
yeah,
expecting from it?
that's basically sounds about right, because basically since it's not, taken literally in Catholicism, it seems to be like a story about morals, about what can possibly happen. And so for me, I never thought, this is actually literal. This is actually like a story about morality. It's the same thing for the other kind of stories with, like, Adam and Eve. We were never taught that stories like Adam and Eve was actually literal. In fact, we taught that, of course, it was actually symbolic about, sin entering into the world. And that's why everybody, have inherent sins. Because I believe it was actually St. Augustine who came up with the idea of original sin, because he was looking for, like, an excuse to put it into the doctrine. And so he saw the story about Adam and Eve. And of course, hey, that's evidence of original sin. So let's have this as, like, this idea for churches to come.
Wow, I did not know that about like original sin was like a later addition that
Yeah,
kind of made it.
the early Christians did not believe in original sin. It was not until Augustine when he started to pitch the idea that we started to see the idea of original sin.
Wow. So would you say that they would just, what was the creation story that they would even like latch onto at that point, or was there no concept of that?
To my best of my knowledge, like, I think the idea of biblical literalism is actually, I guess you can say, a more modern invention, because from what I
Mm.
can tell, maybe like the ancient people also saw it like a story, but not literal. It's like I think it was not until maybe like 20th century that the biblical literalists start to happen. So that's to my knowledge at least. But I need to go into like more research for to answer that question.
Yeah, yeah, no, sure. And also, Prince, I was going to say, because I mean, Islam has had to make sure that its story kind of checks out alongside Christianity. So what we've seen in the last two, obviously, like the Book of Genesis and the Quran, is that it's attributed to the same person, the flood. It's Noah and its prophet Nuh in Arabic. And we're also told the same thing, but I think a lot of Muslims, like I did as well, did believe it literally that he lived to about like 600 and something. Like that's just how those prophets used to live. Like in Islam, there's like 124,000 prophets, but you do genuinely literally take them as being like these gigantic prophets that lived for hundreds of years. So it was interesting because obviously the Bible confirms that he was 600 and something years old as well. Which is so do Christians believe a similar thing, that they were just roaming around for hundreds of years on end, and like a man in his six being alive is building an ark basically on his ones.
I would say, like, for the more like Protestant denominations, they certainly do think that it's literally happening. So, of course, they would think that Adam actually lived to up to 900 years old, and they would also think that that Noah was like 600 years old and stuff. So, I would say the more Protestant literalist denominations do take it as fact that this actually is real. They also think that everybody are descendants of Adam and Eve, and it doesn't make any sort of sense when you take it literally, because that will mean that everybody's like a byproduct of incest. Because like when we were reading like the story for Noah's Ark, like everybody went fruitful and multiply. And of course, like there was like Noah and his family. That would mean like the whole entire population are like a byproduct of incest. And
Mhm.
so it doesn't make any sort of sense. Like if there was like, a byproduct of incest, like why are we not, looking to form right now?
Yeah, 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 no, exactly. And I mean, I do think at some level that is embarrassing, but and again, they try and wiggle out of that as well. But it does go back to that. I mean, you have to. I think I asked a Muslim scholar at one point, like when I was really like, does that mean that everything, like even Adam, Abraham, all of their lineages, like everybody was wiped out to the point where then Muhammad should be directly linked to Noah, as we all should be. And then it's like, well, where do the tribes split off? Um, but anyway, there's a really good question here from Sammy as well. So Sammy goes, Tyler, how would you respond to the defense basically saying that all of these Meso and Greek epics are corrupted versions of Noah story?
My response is to actually show them, like, the dating of the stories that shows that they actually are, of course, before Noah's Ark actually happened. Earlier in the presentation, I said that, of course, the local flood happened around, of course, 29, 28 BCE, and that the first ever kind of Babylonian story appeared during the 2000 BCE. And that's like the same sort of time period that Atrahasis came out, the same sort of time period that Gilgamesh came out. And it was not until I think it was like 1200 to 14 BCE when the book of Genesis came out. And so that would mean that these stories just basically predates the Noah story that we have right now. That's my response to that.
Yeah, 100%. That's again, when you look at it chronologically, even it
Yeah.
makes sense. And then you detail what's extracted. And I think what's really interesting is as we moved along, you can see the names being replaced, you can see the gods being changed up, you could see the mountain area, the land passes they were coming to. You could all see it becoming more and more localized to fit into whatever it was referring to. But the general themes of the story are so like in your face. That it's almost it's uncanny. It really it's so I mean, I'm actually humbled that the power of human beings to, I mean, this is like the biggest version of the telephone game about a myth that took place, sorry, a flood that took place somewhere at some point on some level. But humans have managed to retain this information in various kind of ways, but Quran. I think that's pretty powerful. It's kind of like the very first cave paintings that humans have done, like found in the south of France or whatever. And you're just like, yeah, we see that all across the world. And yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, the
Um,
thing is, like, there was no such thing as copyright back then. And so when people tell stories, like, they would add their own guise and their ideas about a particular event to the story. And so it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger because, like you were saying earlier, it was very much polytheistic. And so it was actually, the result of many different gods. Then from the polytheism, it went into like the idea of monotheism. And then, like you were saying earlier, names changed. Like, I guess the mountains kind of changed, but the whole details are just like uncanny. And so I'm looking forward to, I guess, the Muslim apologists, like, friendly Muslim or Muslim skeptic try to refute what I said in this video. I'm looking forward to response videos.
yeah, I'm so excited for that for you as well. But your friend's still so ready. You're like, come at me.
Yeah, please come
um,
at me. Tell me that your story is not a copy of a copy of a copy. Please.
yeah, and a terrible one at that. Like, I mean, that was one of the stimulating stories out of all the ones we read today. But I was going to say something on that as well, which kind of really piqued my interest today. Is even for people who say like, oh, the Quran like has the come make a surah like compatible or something to the standard of the Quran. That whole challenge that went around, right, which is purely subjective. But what was really interesting was reading like even like Atrahasis and the Epic of Gilgamesh, the way that the gods or the communication is happening between the mortal and the gods, it sounds very much like that the royal ordainment we see in the Quran, which I used to think like, whoa, this kind of like this kind of way that a god is speaking to you is probably only found in the Quran, and that's why they say like there's no book like the Quran, and the Arabic language it is perfect. But even if you go way beyond and before the Quran, those texts are very gripping and full of like that, that authority, that royal we kind of vibe that the Quran also contains. So it almost again today made me just be even that much more underwhelmed by the Quran, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like it's kind of interesting, when you go from like, Abrahamic religion to, not believing in any of this, you can see like, things much more objectively. And so since I did not believe in Noah's Ark when I deconverted and I saw the same exact story from like, the Quran, it's like, wait a second, this is just a ripoff. This is purely a ripoff. So I would say like, the idea is that this is particularly unique to the Quran and that like these stories have nothing like have a lot of things like nothing in common. I would say like it doesn't make sense to me. But if you want to do like more comparisons, maybe I could do one about maybe like Jesus and also the various kind of virgin births, maybe for like to compare that to if you want.
Yeah, sure. I know somebody actually suggested that on Twitter because they're liking this. I think people really like it when we try and kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. And so if we're saying that the Quran is a copy of a copy of a copy, we're also saying the Bible is a copy of a copy of a copy. if we're saying if we're saying that the virgin birth concept is also a copy of a copy, then the Quran and the Bible are miraculous, because those claims just don't hold up. But yeah, I'd love to do that with you. Also, do let us know in the comments, like what kind of stuff you'd like us to talk about. Obviously, I can offer the Islamic perspective, and Prince can offer the Christian one, and we can kind of also overlap and do it in the form of presentation. So let us know what topics intrigue you. I think it's always fascinating to just like, especially with something like the Quran that claims to be this immaculate, perfect, timeless book. When you even look into the stories that we talked about today, the story of Noah, even within the Bible, there is a certain level of discrepancy between those two stories. So they both can't be true. So that's always the thing. So you have to bear that in mind when we are doing this. And I mean, if you really want to go and think critically, I mean, just look at where it's come from. I think every time you look back in history, it will make you understand more and more about why your book potentially might be a special divine book with a special status. When honestly, I was trying to say to Prince, I prefer the Epic of and Atrahasis as stories, believe me, to what was just read at the end there. Like even the Bible one seems so childish compared to that, didn't it?
I would
As
say,
time went on.
I did not include this in the presentation because it's not related to the Quran at all. But there's like one flood story that I do like the most from Norse mythology. So what happened in Norse mythology is that basically there's like a bunch of frost giants, and I believe like one of the frost giants actually bled a lot, and so like flooded with the blood, and then someone also like made a boat, and also escaped from the blood flow. And so I would say that's my favorite version of Flood Story so far, but it's not in the presentation, unfortunately.
That is dope. So that obviously was a self-contained flood story. Like those inspirations didn't get those themes didn't get passed around very much. I take it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Anything with Norse mythology is more metal in general in comparison. Like the most kind of metal mythology there is.
Yeah. That's so true. And that's so interesting in itself, by the way. But Bling is saying it's true the Epic of Gilgamesh gives a much better understanding about morality and explains one's lot than the Bible or Quran. I agree. I felt like there was so much more to extract from that story than there was from the retelling of that, how we see it in the Bible or the Quran. If anything, all it comes across as in the Bible or the Quran is that like God God is not omniscient. God is not all knowing and all powerful. And God cannot deal with sinners, even though He's created them. Like it's just a massive warning. It's just a scare tactic. It seems like look at me. This is God like thumping his chest. Whereas I just feel like in the Epic of Gilgamesh there was a lot more substance to it. Um, but again, if it was, a lot more of a localized flood in that area, it would make sense that it's a lot more of an embellished story that was a lot closer to their hearts. But yeah, I can only imagine, like with the past, either with them, it should have got more and more grandiose as a story, and I think that's probably where it took on. Surely at some point, right, Prince, it took on like a global feature.
Yeah, I would
And
say that the idea of the global feature may have started maybe between like Gilgamesh or Noah's Ark. That's when it began to become more globalized. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would pretty much agree with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, on that note, I am gonna end it here just so we have a nice short stream for an hour and a half, I think is good for people's imaginations. Sorry, to not be just causing havoc right now. So Prince, I do have a stream at 8 with Neil 604 the atheist. If you guys want to come over there, check out our chat. I think it's just going to be like my story out of Islam. I'm sure a lot of you already know that, but again, hopefully with a fresh perspective. And I've never spoken to Neil before, so you can catch me there in just under an hour. And yeah, otherwise, I'm sure Prince is going to be back here soon, and we're going to do something. Like I said, do let us know in the comments anything that you would like us to deep dive into and collab on. But yeah, Prince, can I get your final thoughts on this topic and just anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, my final thoughts on this topic, and this is directed towards Muslims in particular, like the fact that we live in Western countries is actually evidence that free speech actually work, and we need to actually, of course, encourage dialogue about various ideas. If I did a presentation like this in a Muslim country, I would be killed. I would be killed. Number one is saying that the Quran is not divinely inspired, but number two, that I have a picture of Muhammad right here. So I want guys to really think about the ideas that you actually have to be sacred and to also question everything that you've been brought up with. That's my comment towards all the Muslims watching this video.
100%. I'm really glad you said that, Prince, because what Prince did touch on in the beginning of the stream, excuse me, is very important because Prince obviously mentioned Charlie Hebdo, but Samuel Paty, the teacher that was basically beheaded in France, not to mention so many teachers here in the UK that we barely even hear about, have got in trouble for just showing like a mug like this with a picture of Muhammad on it for purposes of religious education in an RE class. He had a mug of Jesus and a mug of Muhammad, and lo and behold, the mug of Muhammad has put him into hiding. and he hasn't been able to teach since then. So we don't know how he's surviving in terms of like a steady income, because even politicians and MPs refuse to go near this because of the backlash, because it's the fear of being called Islamophobic, which is an absolute blatant misnomer. And second of all, the fear of actual physical backlash from Muslims who cannot stand the sight of a cartoon. This cartoon enrages them to the point where they think it's okay to behead somebody in broad daylight. I mean, so that's why I think I commend Prince a lot. I take my metaphorical hat off to you, Prince. It takes a lot of guts to show this. I'm glad we did it here today. Just in the interest of fairness, we're not going after one religion per se. We are saying everything across the board. If we can show Jesus sticking his middle finger up to the world, we can also show Muhammad like this. And the other thing is, we didn't bash it or try and go into it to that extent, but the whole point of this stream was to say that is not a story coming for the first time from Allah directly into the Quran or via Gabriel to Muhammad. As Prince said, it was in existence. Muhammad would have heard it. He was around Waraka bin Nawfal, who was also a Nestorian type Christian, and they had their own, this was going around everywhere. This is what people did. Humans have been telling stories since the dawn of humanity. So do not think that your Quran is some book that survives and should be put on a pedestal above the others. In fact, I would argue it's a poor plagiarization of what came before it.
I really say like the Quran version was much boring in comparison to the other versions.
Right? Terrible. Honestly. But yeah, exactly. So those were the two main takeaways from this. So if you genuinely are like a Muslim who wants to be very, very honest, intellectually honest, then look into the stories that we talked about earlier and just see for yourself if it seems a bit too and also for the claim that you would make, which I think Sami wanted to put forward, is they have corrupted your story. No. How is that possible when proceed your hell of a lot more detail, and a lot of it comes from their gods, which you've taken their multiple pantheon, meshed it into one, and put that onto your God, which is what we see in the Quran and pretty much the Bible. But yes, that's my rant over. Faharish, thank you so much. You can catch me live. Here's the link for it in about 45 minutes. But yeah, thank you, Public Sector Direct. Hit like, everyone, please. Let's share this stream far and wide wherever we can. So we keep Prince coming on as well. Keep up these collabs. Prince, I want to say thank you so much for your time, your energy, not only today, but in preparing these presentations, for doing this research, and for coming here and helping us to basically kill two birds with one stone and just be cool while we do it. Hopefully not be ostracizing people, not scaring them away, but just, trying to keep it real. So thank you.
No, thank you for letting me to come on. I really appreciate making these presentations. Like, I feel as though that by showing these presentations, I'm educating the public. And so maybe, of course, they could possibly, take the information, look for the sources from themselves, and hopefully they can possibly educate themselves about the information I have. And so again, if you guys are, concerned about the sources that I have, I would recommend going to the sources themselves to see for your own eyes that I'm not, manipulating anything. So do not take everything at face value, but actually research too.
Yep, 100%. And there's Prince's channel as well, guys. I understand the channel wasn't working in the description. For Harish and whoever has fixed that link, thank you so much. This is the link there. It's in the chat. So please do go follow Prince's channel, and I will update the link to his channel in the description as soon as we're off air. But yeah, all right, everybody. I'll see you very soon. Prince, I'll see you on Twitter, and then hopefully again here for another collab soon. But until then, take it easy and peace. Bye, everyone.